like to introduce the next moderator, myself. I'm Zinklea Samoa, if you missed the top. I am a correspondent and reporter with NBC News, as well as a fill-in anchor for NBC News Now and MSNBC. So this next discussion is near and dear to my heart, and it's actually a virtual one. I'm going to be speaking with Vanessa Nakate, a climate activist and founder of Rise Up, the climate movement. Part of why I'm so excited about this conversation, Vanessa, I think you can hear us now. Hello. She's Ugandan. My mother is also Ugandan, so I love every time I get to speak with her. If you haven't heard her name, she's 26 years old. She's a Ugandan climate activist and the UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. She was actually inspired by Greta Thunberg, and she was Uganda's first youth climate striker, and she went on to found the Rise Up movement. You may remember in 2020, there were a lot of news stories, probably from us as well at NBC, about a climate activist who got cropped out of a photo. It was a photo at the World Economic Forum with other white climate activists. Vanessa was that person, but her impact has far outweighed the attempted effort to dwell her voice through that crop. And she's also now the author of A Bigger Picture. I'm actually going to stand, sorry to those who I misled. But Vanessa, I want to jump in. I know you're joining us from Uganda. Welcome. Let's give her a welcome.
Thank you.
So one thing we haven't quite touched upon here yet is climate migrants, people displaced by the impacts of climate change. Your work obviously focuses on communities of color and on the continent of Africa. So Vanessa, I also know that last September you actually spent a week in the Horn of Africa, otherwise known as Kenya, together with UNICEF. So can you talk to us a bit about your work, but also how the climate crisis is impacting climate migrants and women and girls specifically?
Well, thank you so much. First of all, it's important to know that 80% of people that are displaced by climate disasters are women and girls. When I made the visit to Turkana in the Horn of Africa, I got to meet different children, but also different mothers as well. Mothers that are trying to keep their young ones alive, trying to keep them alive for,
Vanessa, I think you cut out briefly, and we're going to try and work through this because I know we're continents away. So let's see if she comes back. And in a way, this also speaks to the incredible nature of the work she does, because there's lots of different levels of inequity and challenges that so many activists face.
Because
Sorry, Vanessa, we're losing your video a bit, but I wonder also, team, if we try cutting off her video and just hearing her audio, that may help us. All right.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay,
I don't think
Vanessa.
I have the best
So
connection.
It's okay. We can hear you now. We can no longer see you, but I would love to hear your answer to that question. Again, you were talking about why it's so important to address the climate crisis as a form of equity for women and girls.
Yes, so some of the people I met in Turkana were mothers who are trying to keep their children alive. And I earlier talked about how they're trying to keep them alive for another day, for another week, for another hour, because the drought has left, so many people without access to food. It has left water sources dried up. And many challenges follow, with these disasters. That's why it's important to look at the climate crisis with an intersectional lens. That if we are to talk about, the impacts of the climate crisis, if you're talking about droughts or, floods, it also means talking about how many girls are dropping out of school, how many girls are being forced into early marriages because their families cannot take care of, of their school expenses anymore. He's talking about sexual exploitation, for menstrual hygiene products, to be able to get food to eat, to be able to access water. He's talking about mothers, adolescent girls and women that are pregnant and ending up, giving birth to children that are born into malnutrition. I remember one of the mothers that I met in Turkana, her name is Dorcas. She told me that I asked her when her child started to get sick, and she said that the child was born into malnutrition, meaning the mother was already failing, to access food, to access water, and by the time she gave birth, the child was already falling sick, and she was struggling to keep the child. It's really important to look at, the climate crisis in a much bigger lens, that it's more than weather, it's more than statistics. It's about, girls, it's about women, it's about children, it's about all these other health issues, that are impacting different communities across the world.
No, that's incredibly important. And I know a lot of your work focuses on those who are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis. Most of them are not the ones causing the climate crisis. And I know you've partnered with the Malala Fund. And in that partnership, you all actually found and predicted that by 2025, climate change will be a contributing factor in preventing at least 12.5 million girls from completing their education. So let's sort of take a different lens. How does the climate crisis impact girls' access to education?
Well, I can speak about it in a number of ways, and one of them is, something that I've already talked about. I remember probably in 2019 reading an article that was talking about, how families, when they face climate disasters, they are forced to decide which children continue with school. And many times the priority is given to the boys and girls have to drop out of school, and they're forced into early marriages. So I got to understand that, climate change is exacerbating the rate at which, many girls are dropping out of school. And also many girls and women have the responsibility in their societies to provide food, to collect water. So when the water sources are drying up, that means more girls have to walk long distances. The time that would have been used, to stay at school, to stay in class, this time is used to look for water. This time is used to help their mothers on the farms. And many of these things happen, in the rural communities. That's why it's really important while we talk about the issue of the climate, crisis, we have to talk about girls' education. We have to talk about women empowerment. Project Drawdown lists 100 things that we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And most often ranked among the top, 10 solutions is education. And therein is girls' education, women empowerment. And it goes on to explain how, this as a climate solution that so many women and girls face in communities, but also empowers girls and women. Not only it empowers girls and women with resilience, to be able to address the climate issues in their community, because education not only helps us understand what the climate crisis is, it should also empower us with the skills, with the knowledge and understanding on how to address it. It is true women and girls are on the front lines of the climate crisis, but it's also true that women and girls are powerful agents, for climate justice, for climate action. And this means having more women in leadership places. But all this starts with education. All this starts with women empowerment to ensure that we have women and girls in the rooms where decisions about our planet are being made.
Such an important word. And Vanessa, I wonder, as someone, sometimes we refer to the continent as Africa as the global South. What do you think we get wrong when it comes to thinking about the continent of Africa and the global South and the countries within those regions that often get overlooked by Western nonprofits, advocacy groups, media?
Well, I think that many people look at Africa as, one country, and yet Africa is a continent with 54 countries. And it's not just 54 countries. These are cultures, these are communities, these are tribes, these are different people with different stories, with different experiences. And again, I I know how so many young people across the African continent are really using their voices and their platforms to talk about the need for climate justice. But I also know the struggles in doing that, the struggles in being listened to, the struggles in getting, these platforms. And yet every activist has a story to tell, and every story has a solution to give, and every solution has a life to change. The people in Africa, from Africa, they need to be on the front lines, on the front pages when it comes to discussing, issues about climate justice, because they are on the front lines of a crisis that, first of all, they did not create. We know that Africa as a continent is responsible for less than 4% of the global emissions. So solving a crisis while leaving out the people that are on the front lines of this crisis. So I want people to see Africa as a continent with countries, countries with communities, with peoples, with cultures, with tribes, with different voices, with different experiences, and different young people that are ready, to fight for a future that is not only necessary for all of us, but it's actually possible for all of us. And it's really important to support, the voices and the work of young people. They're not only speaking up, but they're also transforming their communities, through grassroots projects, bringing water, bringing solar, bringing menstrual hygiene products. These are all being, organized by different young people. But they need to be empowered. They need to be supported. Investments are needed to ensure that many of these projects, scale up and more lives are impacted. One action can transform the world, but millions of actions, when put together, they have enormous transformation that they can make. So let us empower, platform, and amplify the work of different young activists across the African continent, across the global south, and across the world.
I hope you heard that, but you just got a round of applause. And to your point of empowerment, Vanessa, I want to end. You're 26. You've already done so much climate activism. I heard some gasps when I said how old you are. You've authored a book and you're founder of the Rise Up movement. But not only that, you also launched the Green School Project in Uganda. And 2 years ago, you're talking about being empowered, getting that funding. I know you got the DVF Awards grant. Can you tell us just briefly here about the impact of the grant and how it supported your work?
Well, first of all, I'm very thankful for the grant that I received from DVF. That is one of the ways that young people should be empowered and should be, invested in and supported. So that is very much appreciated. Of course, with grant processes, we are yet to actually receive the grant. And maybe the next time I'm on the Women's Forum, I can give the impact of that exact grant and what it has done, because we are still in the process of receiving it. However, I can talk about the impact that has already been done through the different support that has come in from different individual donations through the GoFund. This was a project that I started in 2019. And so far we've done installations in 39 schools. So meaning that once we have everything set in with the grant from DVF, those are more, just add more schools to the 39. So the 39, we've so far done installation in 39 schools. These have impacted over 13,000 children in these schools. And we've done, in those installations, 34 solar panels have been installed and 31 eco-friendly cook stoves have been constructed at these schools. And with every stove, $240 US dollars is saved per year per stove in every school. So these are more like the statistics of what has been done, but to really look at the social impact, many of the schools that we've worked on, they have been using kerosene lamps before for students to be able to have access to light. They have been using handheld torches. A specific school explained how teachers would stand like 3 teachers in different corners of the class with torches so that the students can read. And the worst case scenarios are using kerosene lamps, which are dangerous as well for the students. But with the solar panels for the schools that have received them, that has been eliminated, and the students are able to study with light that does not harm, them, and also doesn't harm the teachers. And when it comes to the eco-friendly cook stoves, the schools have been using open fires to prepare food. And open fires mean indoor pollution for the people that prepare the food. Again, in most of the schools that we've worked on, it is women that are responsible for preparing this food. Many mothers that are exposed to pollution without even understanding, the full impact of what they're being exposed to and what it could do to their health. So they've been using open fires. Probably if someone searches, traditional open fires, you can understand what I mean. But with the stove, we are able to, reduce on pollution. We are able to save on the firewood that the schools use in a term by a great number. So this has really been an experience of bringing renewable solutions through solar, bringing clean cooking stoves to the schools, addressing the health issues as well that come along with preparing food and also using kerosene lamps. But also it has been an education experience for teachers and students. There is always excitement, and that joy that you see in students and the teachers is the joy that pushes you to see that there is another installation in another school. That is what makes that is what gives us hope in our work, and that is what makes every support and grant worth it, because it's not just addressing the climate or the planet, but it's also addressing climate justice. We want the planet to be happy, but we also want the people to be happy as well.
Oh, that's a good word. We want the planet to be happy, and we want the people to be happy. And I should note, some of the issues I know with the grant have not actually been from DVF, but some infrastructure issues there in Uganda. So we hope that funding comes soon to you. And we just thank you. I think we're all ready to vote for you for whatever elected office you run for. So let's give it up one more time for Vanessa. Stay safe, stay well, and get some sleep. I think the time zone's a little different over there, so hope you get some rest.
Yeah. Always lovely talking to you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Such a pleasure, and thank you all. I'm sure you've worked up an appetite. So before you get moving, let me tell you what's going on here. We've got a 1-hour lunch break in the Sarah Blakely Center. Where's that? On the 3rd floor. I will also remind you there are steps, so if you're able, feel free to get some steps in as well. When we restart the sessions at 1:40, and they do start at 1:40, they're going to happen in 3 different rooms. So listen closely. Of course, you also have the program if you don't retain this. We have a session on Women's Ladder to Success in STEM. That is on the 3rd floor. There's a separate second session starting with the workplace. That is right here in the auditorium, And then our 3rd session, The Future of Food, Can what we eat change the world? We don't want to eat the world. And that's on the 2nd floor. They all start at the same time, so make sure you figure out where you want to go during lunch. Enjoy and make a new friend. Thank you.